Hello there, in this video we're going to be making a knife out of an old saw blade from an old table saw, I believe, or circular saw. This blade I picked up locally at a swap-and shop for, I think, $3. You can find these used, dull, obviously, not useful for woodworking anymore. Pretty common and usually very cheap. My local Habitat for Humanity also has piles of them, and they make great knife stock. They're high carbon steel and relatively easy to work with. I choose to work with them with a hacksaw. I have a great angle grinder that works brilliantly, but it's very loud, throws a lot of sparks, and it's not the finest cutting tool. So I choose the hacksaw. It's the slower choice, but it offers a little bit more control and a finer kerf, a little bit easier to work with when all the neighbors are asleep. That's important. And basically just trying to rough cut out all these pieces. This took a little bit of just cutting off the big pieces and then cutting off the little corners before taking it to the grinder. And then once we are at the grinder, we start turning what was more of a geometric shape into the actual knife contour. You can see that it's starting to take the shape of something here. The knife design I worked out on a piece of paper first, transferred it to the metal with a Sharpie marker, and so now I just kind of go down to those lines, or as close as I can get with the bench grinder. It's able to remove a lot more metal than my belt sander, and the wheels, well, they last a lot longer than the sanding belts, and they can hog out a little bit more metal. They can get into some of the contours a little bit easier than the belts can sometimes. So it's at this stage of the process, I like to try to remove the bulk of what needs to be removed with the bench grinder. And then after we do that, I like to clamp it up and start filing on the edges. And this the bench grinder is still a bit of a coarse tool, so this starts evening those out, and we kind of work from coarse to fine. Saw, grinder, and file, and sanders. This basically, at this point, we're getting very close to the rough contour of the blank of the piece. And so I work on the belly of the knife. I do a good amount of draw filing at this point just to start squaring up the edges in case sometimes the grinder can leave them at a bevel or even a round over. Depending on what kind of stock you're working with or how you use it, it can't leave them concave. But so I just like to start squaring it up now, and constantly deburring with a sanding block to keep it clean. And then the next part on this knife, it has a pretty dynamic grip curvature, unlike all the few knives I've done before. So this is a bit of a learning process, and I had to kind of exercise different ways of figuring out how to cut and grind it out. And you saw a chainsaw file before, a very thin round file, and this is a half round. That's a coarse file that I usually reserve for woodworking. I mean, it's almost as coarse as a rasp, but this actually works really well for doing the rounds and the hollows of the handle design that I chose. As far as the blade goes, once the Sharpie's on the steel, and once I get close enough, I kind of let the design kind of work itself out. Once you get so far into the actual cutting and grinding of it, you can follow all the way down to the Sharpie line, and you'll get exactly your workpiece. But there's also a degree of just kind of tuning it, and as you know, a design on paper or on the side of the steel is a little bit different than feeling it in your hands. So just as the grip and the balance and just the feel of it come together, you can kind of grind to your liking, cut to your liking, and so it's at this point, like the blade of the knife, I left a lot of meat on there, and then at this point I sand off all the markings, get all the slag, the oil, the scale off the outside of what was the saw blade. Makes it easier to work with. You've got a clean blank, so it looks nicer. The little 1/4-inch hole there in the spine of the blade was, I believe, an alignment hole for the saw, so I am turning that into a bottle opener. Every cool field knife has to have a little auxiliary tool on it, so I decided something to open beers with, which is a pretty basic process of just cutting into the hole and kind of angling it. So you finally take it to the belt grinder to angle all the surfaces to shape. This the bottle opener probably represents the most material removal at this stage in the process that we do on the bench, on the belt grinder, the belt sander. Everything else is real light touch-up work. That's the only real hogging out, if you will, because you really can't, that contour, that shape is, you really need something you can kind of get that hook behind, like the belt. So you're just following that, and then after I get that to my liking, which it actually matched up with a waiter's, like a restaurant waiter's beverage tool bottle opener, just matched up perfectly with it, so that was kind of neat. After that, it's just going through and starting to really fine-tune all the little, any of the imperfections and any of the contour, the profile of it, just, any delineations or, just random bumps. Just smooth this out. This is a little bit of a slow process. I edited it heavily, much like most of the steps, most of the stages. But this is a lot of taking very light passes and then checking and repeating that ad nauseum. I'm just using the entry-level Harbor Freight belt sander. I believe it cost me about $40. It actually, for what it is, it works really well. I've done a number of projects on it already. I only purchased it about 3 or 4 months ago, I think. And other than I've gone through a lot of belts on it, it seemed to have held up, has held up more or less just fine. So it works if you are just starting this, looking for a tool. It's okay. But so that's the basic rough outline of the knife. In the next video, we will work on the bevel, some other features, and we will harden the steel, harden and temper the blade. Thank you for watching.